Hi, I'm Boriana and you're watching Art Unplugged. I know it's been a while and some of you have asked why have I disappeared from YouTube. Well, the reason is that I joined a group of volunteers teaching Bulgarian to Ukrainian refugees online. So that's been occupying most of my time, but now I'm getting on top of things and I hope to be able to return to my video production proper. So let's see what I've got for you today. If you haven't run away yet, you're going to hear about one of the most exciting artists of our time in one of my absolute idols, Paula Rego, who passed away last June. There are artists that need some effort to understand and appreciate, and there are others that captivate you at first glance and keep you under their spell for life. For me, Paula Rego is one of those artists. Her works are full of stories, sometimes ambiguous, often disturbing, sometimes laced with cheeky humor. And even though it is hard to tell exactly what is going on, or maybe exactly because of that, her paintings are so magnetic and compelling. Where does all this come from? Let's step into the wonderful and bizarre world of Paula Rego. Paula Rego was born in 1935 in Portugal to an affluent family, at a time when the country was ruled by the right-wing dictator Antonio Salazar. Rego says she was a shy child who hated the outdoors and was afraid of everything. Her father was an anti-fascist, an Anglophile, and although her home life remained secure, the repressive regime loomed in the background and contributed to a general anxiety in Rego, which will leave its mark on her art. Her mother was a gifted artist, but did not encourage her daughter to make art, though Paula's talent showed from an early age. As Paula Rego said in an interview, upper-class Portuguese women were not encouraged to do anything. The less they did, the better. Rego remembers that when she was a girl, her granny told her that when she will be married one day, she should never contradict her husband and always agree with him. So the shy child, raised to be a decorative wife, found the freedom she needed in art. Here she could do anything, scratch over someone you hate, or replace humans with animals, or paint the dictator vomiting the motherland. This is The Policeman's Daughter, painted in 1987. Does the act of polishing the boot make this young girl a collaborator? Is she a typical Portuguese woman of her time, meant to be seen but not heard? There are different interpretations of this scene. In mine, the policeman's boot is a metaphor for Salazar, the dictator who kept the nation under his boot. Despite her servile role, with her strong arms and grim face, this girl is anything but submissive. Look closely. Can you sense the rage in the pregnant silence? Who is in control here, really? Is she thrusting her arm up the stiff column of his boot or up his... And doesn't her vigorous polishing feel more like a physical punishment? What about the cat looking wistfully through the window? What do you think about it? Tell me in the comments below. When Paula Rego was 16, her family sent her to a finishing school in England. She hated it, dropped out, and in 1952 applied to the Slade School of Fine Art in London to study painting. The school, believe it or not, did not want to accept her at first. So her British guardian told them, well, she won't last long, she was very wealthy and will be married soon. and they agreed. 2 years later, she won the Summer Composition Prize at the school. While at Slade, Rego met her future husband, the artist Victor Willing, who was 7 years older than her and reckoned by many to be the best painter of his generation. As Willing was married at the time, the relationship resulted in several abortions for Rego. All girls were having them, she says, rather dispassionately in an interview. This was before the pill, you see. Her personal experience and later a failed referendum for legalizing abortion in Portugal inspired her to produce a series of harrowing pastels and etchings, the Abortion series. Women are seen alone and abject in sordid backstreet interiors. There is no gore and blood, no knife in sight. A sinister eroticism lingering in their poses increases the sense of loneliness and dread of the scene. But look at these strong, robust bodies, the dominant presence of the figures in the compositions, the direct gazes, the gripping fingers. These women may appear resigned to their fate, yet they remain resilient. The impact of these works on the public was such that in a second referendum in 2007, the law for legalizing abortion in Portugal was passed, and Paula Rego was largely credited with its success. In 1966, her husband was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. His illness threw Rego into deep depression, a condition she was familiar with from her childhood, as it had affected both her and her father in the past. She produced a series of works known as the Depression series, which really speak for themselves. Paula Rego worked with life models. She rarely painted herself, but often said that all her work was deeply personal and the models were stand-ins for herself. Towards the 90s, she turned to pastel. She preferred the hardness and control of the pastel stick over the brush. In her studio, she kept various props, which she often made herself and then used to stage her compositions. What went on behind closed doors was always a fascination for Paula Rego and gave her an opportunity to create vivid and disturbing domestic scenes, drawing on her own life experience and family stories or tales and fables which she collected. Her narratives have the darkest undercurrents of violence, eroticism, oppression, even incest, and at the same time they look like children's fables. What exactly is going on here? An incestuous orgy? Or caring for a father who is unable to help himself? And here, in this painting, often interpreted autobiographically, we see people who do not necessarily look like they're at the same party, let alone dancing to the same tune. The strange scene is set against the backdrop of a moonlit night and a landscape reminiscent of the Portuguese coast with a fortress dominating the horizon. The group of the child, mother and grandmother represents a complete cycle of life. Rego's husband appears twice in this painting, once dancing with a blonde woman, his first wife, and again dancing with a visibly pregnant brunette, Paula. To the left stands the main character, a woman dressed in a traditional Portuguese costume. Painted in different proportions and in her own compositional space, she looks like the master of ceremony. Is this Paula Rego contemplating her own life? Paula Rego is always described as a storyteller. Even her museum in Cascais, Portugal, is called the House of Stories. To me, however, she is not so much a storyteller as she is a poet. A narrative unfolds in a time sequence and follows a certain logic. In poetry, however, time can go in circles and logic gives way to emotion. And this is exactly what happens in Rego's works. The story may not be possible to decipher, but the feeling is unmistakable. If Paula Rego resorted to a well-known plot, she subverted it, adding new, unexpected meanings. The image we started with is titled Snow White and the Stepmother. You wouldn't have guessed it, but now that I told you, I'm sure things start falling in place, albeit in an unexpected way. You begin to notice the body language and the dissonant proportions. We do not remember such a scene in the story, and this is not what Snow White is supposed to look like. This image shows what this girl feels like in the presence of the fancy woman in her tight dress and heels. Clumsy, chunky, awkward. Paula Rego's Snow White is a story about power and psychological abuse. And what about her Pinocchio and the fairy? Spooky, isn't it? What does it make you think of? Tell me in the comments. Of course, Paula Rego could be funny too in her cheeky way. Look at Snow White's mother wearing the wolf's fur. Who doesn't recognize the type? You may have noticed that women occupy the central part in almost all of Paula Rego's works, and not surprisingly, she is often called a feminist artist. I prefer to call her a women's artist, which is different. Paula Rego did not stick to the typical feminist agenda. She focused on the women's experience from a human perspective, with a gut-wrenching insight and candor. Here are her ballerinas, a far cry from the idealized stereotype of the ballet dancer. Rego depicts the female body as capable and strong, a body that is not trying to please, but is assertive and matter-of-fact. In 1994, a tale about a woman turning into a dog gave her the idea for her Dog Women series, depicting, women behaving like dogs. Sounds bizarre? Well, just look here. An antithesis of usual feminine behavior, the bestial becomes a positive characteristic. To be a dog woman is not necessarily to be downtrodden, says Rego. To be bestial is good. It's physical. Eating, snarling, all activities to do with sensation are positive. To picture a woman as a dog is utterly believable, she says. That was the good Portuguese girl exorcising her own demons. Paula Rego was a prolific artist who didn't fail to surprise till the end. What I just showed you only scratches the surface, such is the depth and breadth of her talent. She was a figurative and deeply emotive artist who rose to fame at the time when art was dominated by the dry pretentiousness of conceptualism. And mark my words, Paula Rego will remain in history long after all marinated sharks, unmade beds, and other pretentious blubber is long forgotten. Even if we do not always know what is happening in her baffling stories, we all recognize the emotions at play. And this is how her stories become our truths, whoever we might be. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please let me know what you think about Paula Rego and her art in the comments below. Don't forget to give it thumbs up, share, and please subscribe if you haven't done that already. If you want to see my work as an artist, please find me on social media. All the links are in the description below. Thanks for watching. I hope to be able to be back with you properly soon. Let's hope this ugly war is over. Bye.